Reading response questions. So these are the guidelines for the reading response questions that you will complete for each reading that we do in this course. Reading response questions are designed to help us gain more from the texts we read. In order to achieve this goal, it's important that we read the text carefully and thoroughly before we respond to the questions. And because we are trying to practice expanding our ideas and increasing our specificity in our writing, we need to include specific quotations and details from the readings in our responses. To complete the reading response questions satisfactorily, follow these guidelines. Read through the set of reading response questions before you begin reading the corresponding text. This will provide you with a heads up on what to expect in the text. Set yourself up for success by having a pen or pencil in hand and a notebook open. Underline things that stand out to you as interesting, important, or confusing. Jot down connections to other ideas or texts, and write questions in the margins or in your notebook. If you have the electronic version of the book, you should be able to use your computer or e-reader's annotation highlighting feature to annotate. This is a part of what we call active reading. Clearly label each question. In your responses to the reading response questions, include specific quotations from the reading. Be sure to explain how and why the quotations you included adequately responds to the question. This not only challenges you to read more closely, but also helps you to be more specific in your writing in general. And finally, proofread. Take pride and ownership over the work you produce. If you want your work to be taken seriously, you too must take it seriously. If these guidelines are not followed, or if it's apparent the student has not carefully read the text, they will need to revise and resubmit their reading response questions. So all of this, just to provide some context, the reading response questions, as I've explained, are designed to help you gain more from the things that we read in our course. So they're meant to target your focus on specific concepts or ideas, to help you pay closer attention to some of the finer details of the text, but then also in your responses to be able to not only express your understanding or analysis of these ideas, but to include specific details from the text to show that your ideas are anchored or tied or connected to specific ideas or details in the text. Now, ultimately, this is what we're trying to accomplish in a lot of our essay writing as well. Many of the essays that we write, we're challenged to include quotations from outside readings or texts in order to enhance or increase the meaning of our ideas, right? So these reading response questions are kind of like practice. If we're gearing up to play a game, for example, if we're going to use a sports analogy, you don't just show up to the game without having spent many, many hours practicing, right? So in this case, the essay is kind of like the game, and all of the many practices leading up to the game are these reading response questions. So this is a way for you to practice in a low stakes setting, meaning that the stakes are not very high. All of these things that we're trying to develop in our course, right? So it's really important that you pay attention to these guidelines, you follow them, and you are reading the text thoroughly and carefully, and you're doing your best to demonstrate that in your reading response questions. So if a student is not being detailed in their responses, and if I get the impression that they haven't really read the text carefully, then that student is going to need to revise their reading response questions so that they're way more detailed, so that they're including specifics, so that they're also including explanations of the quotations or ideas that they're including. So how does something mean what you say it means? Why is that the case? So always take your ideas a step further by addressing those how and why questions, especially if you're incorporating specific quotations from the reading, right? Don't let the quotations speak for themselves. It's important that you explain how you are interpreting them, right? Because somebody else could read those ideas and get a different understanding of it, right? So again, these guidelines are here to clearly lay out what you should focus on as you complete your reading response questions for any given reading. So return to these guidelines throughout the semester. Make sure that you're clearly and adequately following these guidelines in your reading response questions. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and send me a message on Canvas. Otherwise, happy reading.